My brothers and sisters, let me start by asking you something very important. Have you ever had a thought cross your mind that you knew was wrong, yet it felt so convincing? That sudden urge, that quiet whisper, that little voice pushing you towards what displeases Allah. That is Shaytan at work. And unless we learn how to recognize his whispers and counter them, we risk being led further and further away from the path of goodness. Today, I want to share with you how Shaytan whispers into our lives, and more importantly, how you can defeat those whispers with the help of Allah. My brothers and sisters, one of the most dangerous realities about Shaytan is that he doesn't come to you openly, announcing his plans. He doesn't appear with horns and say, "I am Shaytan, follow me into destruction." If he did, nobody would listen. Instead, he works in whispers, quiet, subtle, and almost invisible. He attacks in ways so small, so hidden, that you hardly notice it's happening. And by the time you realize, you may already be caught in his net. Think about it. Shaytan rarely convinces someone to commit a huge sin in one step. He doesn't come to a person who prays 5 times a day and suddenly say, "Stop praying forever." No, he knows you would never accept that. Instead, he whispers, "You're tired. Delay this prayer just a little. Pray later." Then the next time he says, "You've already delayed once. It won't harm to delay again." Then slowly, "Why not just pray quickly without focus?" Until eventually the connection with prayer becomes weaker and weaker, and perhaps one day it's abandoned altogether. That is how Shaytan works. Gradual, step by step. This is why Allah warns us not to follow the footsteps of Shaytan. Notice Allah didn't say, "Do not follow Shaytan." Allah said, "Do not follow his footsteps." Why? Because Shaytan doesn't push you into a pit all at once. He takes you by the hand, one small step at a time. What looks harmless today could be the start of a path that leads you away from Allah tomorrow. Let me give you another example. Imagine a person who is very careful about avoiding sin. Shaytan won't come and say, "Commit a huge crime." That would fail instantly. Instead, he might whisper, "Just look at this once, it won't hurt." Or, "It's only a small thing, don't be so strict." And then when the person repeats it, Shaytan says, "See, nothing happened, it's fine." Slowly, what was once considered wrong becomes normalized. What was once shocking becomes ordinary. And what was once avoided becomes a daily habit. This is exactly how Shaytan deceives. He makes wrong look small, and he makes small wrongs pile up until they crush the soul. We see this in our daily lives too. Take honesty, for example. A believer knows lying is a sin, but Shaytan doesn't say, "Become a liar today." Instead, he whispers, "It's just a tiny lie. You're not hurting anyone. It will make things easier." Then once the person accepts that, the next time the lie is a little bigger, then a little bigger, until one day dishonesty is no longer a mistake, it's a lifestyle. And it all started with one whisper, one excuse, one small step. And Shaytan is patient, my brothers and sisters. He doesn't rush. He can wait years if needed. As long as you keep moving in his direction, step by step, he is satisfied. And this is why many people don't even realize they are being trapped. If someone were to suddenly abandon their faith, it would be shocking, it would be noticeable. But when someone slowly slips away, little by little, hardly anyone notices. Even the person themselves may not notice until they look back and realize how far they've drifted. Think of it like the ocean. If you stand at the shore and take one step into the water, you're still safe. Another step, still safe. But keep stepping little by little, and suddenly you find yourself so far in that you're struggling to breathe. You didn't jump into the deep end in one go, but you walked into it slowly, step by step. That is how Shaytan works. Small steps that feel safe until you're in too deep. This is why awareness is so important. You must train yourself to recognize the very first whisper. When you hear that voice telling you, "Just delay, just once, just a little," stop right there. Don't give it power, because every time you entertain that voice, it becomes louder. And every time you resist it, it becomes weaker. Shaytan has no real authority over you. He cannot force you to sin. All he can do is whisper. The choice is always yours, and here's the truth. When you reject that very first step, you protect yourself from the next 10 steps that would have followed. But when you accept the first step, you've opened the door to more. So the smartest thing a believer can do is to close the door early. Don't wait until the habit has grown. Don't wait until you're deep in the ocean. Cut it off from the start. My beloved brothers and sisters, never underestimate a small whisper. That tiny urge to procrastinate, that little justification to compromise, that quiet suggestion to just do it once. That is where the battle begins. And whoever wins in those small battles wins the larger war. My brothers and sisters, one of Shaytan's most destructive tactics is that he whispers doubt into the hearts of believers. And he does this very cleverly. He doesn't walk up to a person and say, stop believing in Allah. He knows that if he came directly like that, most people would reject him immediately. Instead, he sows tiny seeds of doubt, one thought at a time, planting them in your heart when you are vulnerable, hoping that if he waters them long enough, they will grow into a tree that blocks out your faith. Have you ever had a thought cross your mind during prayer like, is Allah really listening to me? Or perhaps you wondered, what if my prayer isn't accepted? What if I'm not sincere enough? Maybe you even thought, why is my life difficult if Allah loves me? These thoughts, my brothers and sisters, are not unusual. They are the whispers of Shaytan. His plan is to make you think these doubts are coming from you, so that you feel guilty, ashamed, and worse, so that you begin to believe them. Now let me explain something very important. Having doubts or intrusive thoughts does not make you a bad Muslim. It does not mean you have weak faith. In fact, sometimes the very fact that you are troubled by these whispers shows that your heart cares about faith. Shaytan wants you to think you are doomed simply for being attacked by these thoughts. But the truth is, the thought itself is not the sin. The sin is when you hold on to it, feed it, and let it shape your actions. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone has a small spark of fireland on their clothing. If they quickly brush it off, there's no damage. But if they sit and think, oh no, there's fire here, what should I do? And leave it unattended, soon it burns a hole through the cloth. Shaitan's whispers are like sparks. If you dismiss them quickly, they die. But if you entertain them, they can burn through your heart. Shaitan knows exactly where to whisper. If he sees you are devoted in prayer, he might whisper, did you make wudu properly? Was that prayer valid? And then he keeps repeating it until the person spends hours washing themselves, redoing prayers over and over. What has he done? He has turned worship into a burden by planting obsessive doubts. If he sees you studying faith, he might whisper, but how do you really know this is true? What if you are following the wrong religion? And then he keeps digging until a person feels restless and anxious. The aim is always the same, to shake your certainty, to steal your peace. So how do we fight back? The first step is knowledge. A believer who understands their faith, who studies and seeks knowledge, is harder to deceive. Because when the whisper comes, you can answer it with what you know. For example, when Shaitan whispers, Allah won't forgive you, the believer remembers, but Allah said His mercy encompasses everything. When Shaitan says, your prayer doesn't matter, the believer remembers, but Allah said, prayer protects against evil. Knowledge becomes like a shield that blocks the arrow before it strikes. The second step is to ignore the whispers when they come. This may sound strange, but it's true. The more you engage with the thought, the more power you give it. If Shaitan whispers, what if you didn't pray correctly? And you start panicking, double-checking, redoing, you are feeding his whisper. But if you calmly say, this is Shaitan's trick, and you move on, the whisper loses its strength. Shaitan thrives on attention. Don't give it to him. And remember, my brothers and sisters, that doubt is not the opposite of faith. In fact, when you wrestle with doubt and overcome it, your faith becomes stronger. Just like a muscle grows stronger when it resists weight, your Iman grows stronger when you resist Shaitan's whispers. Sometimes those who have fought doubt emerge with an even deeper, more unshakable belief than before. Let me share with you something beautiful. Even the companions of the Prophet once complained that Shaitan was whispering terrible doubts into their hearts, and they felt so ashamed. Do you know what they were told? That those very feelings of discomfort were a sign of faith. Why? Because if you hated the thought, if it made you uncomfortable, it means your heart is still alive and connected to Allah. A dead heart would not care. So the next time you feel a whisper of doubt, don't panic. Recognize it for what it is. A trick from Shaytan. Brush it away. Replace it with remembrance of Allah. Say to yourself, my faith is not measured by my thoughts, but by my choices and actions. And choose to hold on to your belief, no matter how many whispers try to shake it. My beloved brothers and sisters, never let Shaytan convince you that you are a bad believer because of a thought. You are not your whispers. You are stronger than them. And with knowledge, remembrance, and trust in Allah, you can silence the doubts and keep your heart firm upon the truth. One of the clearest ways Shaytan attacks us is by distracting us from our worship. And this is something every single one of us has experienced. You stand up for prayer, ready to connect with Allah, and suddenly your mind starts running in every direction. You remember things you had completely forgotten a moment ago. Your shopping list, your phone calls, your meetings, your conversations. Sometimes even the most random thoughts come flying into your head. Things that don't make sense at all. And you ask yourself, where did that come from? The answer is simple. That is Shaytan. Why does he do this? Because Shaytan knows the power of worship. He knows that salah, prayer, is your lifeline to Allah. It's your shield, your nourishment, your protection. If he can't stop you from praying altogether, then at least he wants to make that prayer empty. He wants to steal the sweetness of it, to turn it into a ritual of movements without meaning. He doesn't care if you pray, as long as you pray without heart, without focus, without connection, because then you finish, but you haven't fed your soul. And notice, Shaytan doesn't whisper these distractions before you start prayer. He waits until you say Allahu Akbar. As soon as you begin, it's as if he presses play on a whole list of reminders and thoughts. Why? Because he doesn't want you to taste the closeness to Allah that comes when your heart is fully engaged. Now let me share something with you. Being distracted in prayer is not unusual. Even the most righteous people experience it. The real question is, do you fight back or do you let Shaytan win? Some people give up. They say, what's the point? I can't concentrate anyway. That's exactly what Shaytan wants, to make you abandon the effort. But others push harder. They say, no, I will keep pulling my mind back, even if it wanders 1,000 times. That is the difference between those who grow and those who give up. Think about it like this. Imagine you are training a wild horse. The first time you try to ride it, it runs off in every direction. Do you give up and say, this horse will never listen? You keep pulling the reins again and again until slowly, with patience, the horse learns to obey. Your mind is like that horse. At first, it will wander every time you pray. But if you keep pulling it back, focus, remember Allah, you are in salah, over time, it learns to stay still. That is how concentration is built. Shaitan's trick is to convince you that because you were distracted, your prayer was worthless. That is false. Every time you pull your mind back, you are winning. Even if you spent the whole prayer fighting distractions, that struggle itself is an act of worship. It shows that your heart cares. And Allah sees the effort, not just the result. And sometimes Shaitan distracts us, not just during prayer, but also before worship. He makes you feel lazy. You know it's time to pray, but suddenly you feel tired, heavy, unmotivated. He whispers, do it later. Just finish this first. And before you know it, the time for prayer has gone. How many times has that happened to us? That's not coincidence. That's Shaitan making worship seem difficult when in reality...